Recorded in the background there.
Don't need a transcription. I'll get rid of that. So we're recording. Do you want me to share screen, Jane, and then?
Yeah, I've got a minute and then we'll just crack on.
Turn on microphone. It'll be background noise.
Fine.
It's just us photos. I see.
Right, so it's 12. So we'll crack on.
Yeah.
Do you want us to turn our microphone off or?
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. So today the lunchtime learning is around feeding and why and how we get our referrals in around feeding issues is often one of the things that presents to us in the parent-infant relationship team. Just for anybody else that's watching this after, my name is Jane Fisher and my colleague is Sally Smith, and we're both the clinical leads for the parent and infant relationship team. So welcome. So yeah, we're going to look at it, feeding and what feeding issues may present where actually they're a parent and infant relationship problem rather than an actual feeding issue. So next slide, please. So these are some of the common feeding issues that we see in children. So spitting up and vomiting, constipation, allergy intolerance, nighttime disturbance, and excessive crying. They often get diagnosed as being, or where parents will think there must be a physical or medical reason for why the baby is crying. So are they, for example, intolerant to milk? That's a really one that we get really quite common. A lot, where often they come to us and they've had numerous different sorts of formulas, including prescription only formulas for cow's milk protein intolerance. They may have seen different GPs. They may have seen paediatricians at the hospital, and everybody is saying, well, it's still not working, baby's crying. And the same for gastroesophageal reflux. So that's another one that often parents think there must be the baby must have, particularly if they're spitting up. And often they're given, again, different medications that then don't work. So they're all normal things that happen that we need to think about when we're thinking about that parent and infant relationship. Is it a true allergy? Is it a true constipation? Is it a true reflux, or is it something going on with that parent and infant relationship? Is it normal behavior? Because babies cry in order to get a need met. It's their main form of communication. And we're going to talk a little bit later on about the different temperaments, because some babies cry more than others. But like I say, a lot of the time, what we found in the parent-infant relationship team is we get families, children referred into us where there's this feeding issue, where they've tried everything and it's just not working, and they're being told actually it isn't a feeding issue, and they'll come to us, and actually when we go out and do our initial assessment, it's never about feeding. Often it's that the parents are struggling with that transition to parenthood, or there's a mismatch in the temperament of the child to how mum's feeling. So for example, if you've got a child, when we talk about temperaments, that a feisty temperament, and you've got a mum that's feeling depressed, there's a mismatch there, and so mum can't cope with that crying quite as much as well as she could if they were both the same, if mum was an easygoing temperament and wasn't depressed. So that can be difficult. And what we try to do is try and normalize that, these are human beings that are getting used to their new environment. We talk a lot within parent-infant relationship work around, and attachment theorists talk about saber-toothed tigers and teddy bears. So babies haven't progressed from when we lived in caves, and so they had to have the robust cry, and that's where this icon message comes from. That period of crying that increases around 2 weeks of age, reaches a peak about 6 to 8 weeks, and then steadily gets better in the next 3 to 4 months. And that goes back, they think, to when we lived in caves. They had to have this robust cry because parents would go off foraging for food, and if they didn't have a robust cry, then they get eaten by saber-toothed tigers. And we haven't evolved as a species since that time. So they have to have that robust diet in order to get their needs met. And this can be quite difficult for parents. So everything that for a baby, everything they encounter is completely new. So obviously for 9 months, they've been in that nice cocoon inside mum, keeping warm. They can hear muffled voices, but it's a nice, quiet, contained space. Their emotions are being contained. Then suddenly they're here in this world and everything is new. You know, they've suddenly got to feed, they've got to digest food, they've got to wear clothes, they're putting water for bathing. There's different smells, sounds, etc. And for a baby, that is to say, every experience is like a saber-toothed tiger. So they seek to keep the parents close. And that's when parents can really struggle with that, having to not being able to put the baby down, baby always wanted to be on them, and they see that that must be a medical issue, there must be a feeding issue, there must be a reflux issue. We often get them saying that the baby's constipated, and actually when you look into that, it's not that they're constipated, it's just that they may not be going as often as they did to begin with. And again, for breastfed babies, you would expect them to go quite frequently every day until they reach about 4 to 6 weeks, and then they can go a whole week without having a poo, and then they'll have a huge explosion. Bottle-fed babies can go every couple of days, and then as long as when they go it's soft, that's absolutely fine. Initially the first couple of weeks, the bowel's getting used to being fed. It's never been fed before, so they tend to, poo all the time. And then, like I say, particularly for bottle-fed babies, that calms down a little bit. But parents see that there must be something medically wrong. They must be constipated. And it's not, it's just the bowels adjusted to having that formula. Like I say, if they're breastfed, they should still continue to do really regular stools every day until around 4 to 6 weeks, and then they might go a bit longer. But bottle-fed babies can go a few days, and as long as when they go it's soft, that's absolutely fine. The other thing they have to do is they have to push it out, and therefore on a night, we're going to look at baby states, and on a night they make lots of noises because it takes the practice to push a stool out, whether it's soft or not, because again, they've never had to do it before. But that's perceived by parents that there's something physically wrong with them, they must have constipation. And we would never say to a parent, don't check that out. If you are worried, let's make sure there's no medical cause, because there could be, but let's also think, if you've exhausted all that before we jump into doing lots of different formulas and medication, etc. Is there a parent-infant relationship issue going on? Are parents feeling struggling with that transition to parenthood? Are they struggling with that? Have they got a child that's an eye crier and they're really struggling with that? And some of the symptoms that young babies display as disengagement cues, which we're going to discuss later, are vomiting, spitting up, squirming. So all some of those symptoms that will mirror that a reflux. So it's no wonder that they think there's a physical issue, there's a medical issue. Next slide, please.
Yeah, indeed. Often what we do see is if there is an actual medical issue, you will see an impact in weight. So it won't always just be a really healthy, fit and well baby. Usually if they've got quite a significant reflux or an intolerance problem, you will see an impact in weight, or just the general presentation of baby, and there'll probably be some other accompanying symptoms as well. But yeah, like you say, if you've got anybody presenting in hubs and in classes that are there every week, and they're on this now and the GP can't fix it, and just always have that, could it be something else, head on, I suppose.
Yeah, that parent-infant relationship in mind. And on the other thing, and on the flip side of that, ask them to seek medical help first if they haven't as well, so that it's a two-pronged approach, because we don't want to miss a medical issue. But like I say, a lot of the time we're finding, and again, they should really respond really quickly to a change in formula if they've got a cow's milk protein intolerance, and they shouldn't have to have 6 or 7 different formulas, which I've had when I was a health visitor, gone to do the 6 to 8 week check, and they've already had 5 or 6 different formulas. Well, they take time to work, but also they should work. They should work, and the same with reflux medication in particular. That should work really quickly. So you know, if they're still crying after that, it could be that there's a parent-infant relationship issue. So some of the disengagement cues. So obviously babies speak through cues, and sometimes when they become overwhelmed or they want to change a pace, or you know they need something different, they will display disengagement cues. Obviously they have engagement cues when they want to engage with us, but a lot of the disengagement cues can very much mirror some of the things. So like the spitting up can be one of them. So things like coughing and sneezing, self-clasping. So you know, pulling at themselves, you know, ragging at the face, and that often parents think that that's there's something physically wrong because they're in pain. They think they're in pain, you know, pulling your legs up, and you might be surprised to know that there's no scientific basis for colic, and yet children still get labelled, babies still get labelled as being colicky babies or having colic. They used to so to get an actual diagnosis of colic, they used to say that if a baby cried for 3 hours a day for 3 days a week over 3 weeks, then they've got colic. There's no scientific basis for that, but there is a scientific basis for babies and young children up to 1 will have these periods of inconsolable crying, and that goes back to that 1001 critical days at conception to 2 years, when the brain is developing it at its fastest. The connections within the brain are a million per second. So when there is a thing about when they do have this period of developmental leaps, they're doing a lot of development particularly in that first year, they will have periods of this inconsolable crying. So, and there is a scientific basis to that, and that's all to do with brain development. That's why it's important when we talk about that shaken baby icon message that you probably all heard of, that we don't just, often we say, don't we, reach peak at 6 to 8 weeks, get better over the next 4 to 5 months. But I think we have to put a proviso in there that actually even up to 1+, babies and young children will still have periods of inconsolable crying where nothing that parents do will make a difference, and it's because of this rapid brain development and these developmental leaps that they're having.
And sometimes Sorry, I was just going to say, just a bit of normalizing can just be what that parent needs. Absolutely. And just looking at what, coping strategies for the parent, rather than trying to think, well, let's fix the child. Let's look at how we can support the parent through this difficult period, rather than what can we do to fix the baby? Because often it's really, really normal.
It is. So things like increased sucking noises, and what will parents think straight away? Oh, they want feeding, and I think that's when they can get into this pattern of what. And I hate it when the say, paediatrician says they're overfeeding. Right. But if you've got a child that's doing disengagement cues and parents are thinking, and they've got these increased sucking noises, and they think, oh, they must be hungry, and they give them, they try and feed them, and then baby's sick. Because particularly I think bottle fed babies, because you stick a teat in a baby's mouth, it's like if you stick your finger, because the sucking is different to when they breastfeed. It's a different sucking motion. They'll just suck and suck and suck and suck and suck and suck, so they'll take that feed and then they'll be sick, and then you can understand them why, and they'll be upset because their tummy's overfull. So you can understand why they get into this. They must have reflux because they're being sick, but it may be that they're actually giving these cues that I need a rest, I need a break, I need something different, I need you to calm down, I need you to slow the pace down a little bit, but that's been, so they give them sucking noises, but that then has been perceived by the parents as, oh, they must be hungry. So some more are turning away. So babies do have a couple of things that they do in order to try and self-soothe, and initially they're not really good at it, but things like they will turn away, they will fixate on something like a telly, like the light, like pattern wallpaper. And again, this is a way of, I'm disengaging, I need a minute. And the other thing they will do is put their hands in the mouth and suck on the fingers. Everything, we know from development that everything eventually goes in the mouth, doesn't it, for a short period of time, because that's how they explore the world around them. So toys and things go in the mouth, but initially that is a self-soothing thing. So it's about making sure that parents are around at this. And like I say, hiccups, getting sick are quite common. if it's projectile vomiting, that's absolutely different. But if they're just being a little bit sicky, positing we call it, spitting up between feeds, it could be that they're trying to say, oh, this is too much. I need a different pace. Next slide, please.
Absolutely. And just where Jane's talked about kind of looking away, those really overt kind of disengagement cues, sometimes it can be really subtle, just like a dullness comes across their faces. But I suppose that's the only, their eyes become less bright and kind of active and sparkly, and they just kind of becomes a bit mask-like. And it is just that minute of, I just need to calm down, give me a minute, let me just get myself a little bit more grounded, and then I can come back to you. But it takes time. It really takes time. Oh, we've got some more there, Jane. That you've gone, yeah, I'll move on.
Yeah, I'm on to baby states.
Baby states, there we go.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot the last one. So we know that babies go in and out of different states, and if parents can recognise what state their baby's in, then they can connect better with their baby, and it can sort of make them feel a bit more confident, particularly when we talk about active sleep, which is we're going to talk about in a minute. So in the top left, we've got deep sleep, and most babies are really good at protecting the sleep, and we're going to discuss in a minute those that struggle, but most babies are really good at protecting the sleep from noise and sound. So it's important that parents know that they can make a noise around the baby. They don't have to stop doing activities. They don't have to tell their other children to be quiet around the baby, because they can protect their sleep when they're in deep sleep, and deep sleep, nothing's going to wake them up. And then middle left is what we call active or light sleep, and this is the one that parents parents often think that the baby's constipated or there's something wrong with them, because they make a lot of noise, and particularly in the middle of the night. They'll grunt, they'll groan, they may have the eyes slightly open, one eye slightly open, you can see rapid eye movements behind the eyelids, but they do make a lot of noise, and some babies are more noisy than others. They may be pulling their legs up, they may be making, like I say, all these noises, and that's when, and going red in the face, but they're still asleep, and parents either immediately think there's something medically wrong with them, or like constipation, or they rush to feed them because they think they're waking up, and then baby won't feed, and then they struggle to get them back to sleep, and you get this cycle of babies being misunderstood and parents struggling with that crying, whereas if they'd left that baby for a while, he may have gone back into deep sleep, or he may come back up to the next one, which is drowsy. And drowsy sleep is that drunken milk look, where they've had a feed and they'll look like they're a bit drunk, but very young babies will want to cuddle into parents to fall asleep, and then what parents say is they won't go down in the Moses basket, and that's because generally what happens is they go from this upright position, and they drop them down into the Moses basket, and then they have this really good reflex called the Moro reflex, or the startle reflex, that wakes them up. So the best thing to do is to move that baby to a more sidewards position before, so there's less of a gap, so you're not eliciting that Moro reflex. The top right is quiet alert state, and that's the optimum time that babies want to interact with the parents. It's where they're generally quite still, they're open-mouthed. Young babies will move themselves forward. They may make those sucking, that num 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 feeding sounds, because they're trying to interact. And very young babies will start to talk to parents and do that back and forth serve and return interaction, which is important for their development. It's the important part of brain development, and they will initiate that. Babies will initiate that from sounds that they utter right from birth. And then you've got fussing stage in the middle, and that's where there might be a bit, parents often say they're whinging, they're always whinging, and the fussing stage is the baby saying to parents, I need a change here, this is getting a bit overwhelming, I need something different. And then there's the out and out crying, which is clearly expressing a need, whether that's a need for comfort, whether that's a need for feeding, whether that's a need for changing, whether that's a need for interaction, whether that's a need for a change of pace. They may even want to just be put down like us and be left alone for a little bit, because it's all become a little bit overwhelming. And so if we can teach parents around these sleep states, and you can find these on our app, on the Wakefield Growing Healthy app, but also on Getting to Know Your Baby website as well. And on the Getting to Know Your Baby website, they also have videos for each of these so that parents can begin to recognise, but also it gives them some hints and tips of what to do when babies are in these different states, and particularly like the crying stage if they're struggling.
Yeah, all of those videos as well, Jane, are on the Growing Healthy, the pet baby bonding section. And as well, I'm sure that you probably are going to do a bit of a plug at the end, but our Ready to Relate training goes through all of this in quite a lot of detail. So I'm very aware that you've shared that, Keita, that you're new to the team, and that you might have not have completed the Ready to Relate. So that would be something that you could access as well.
I'm booked on in, I think it's March, I'm booked on for, so.
Wonderful stuff, wonderful stuff. I'll move it on.
That's fine. So when we're talking about baby states and state regulation, so you if you've been around children, you may have heard of something called the neonatal behavioural assessment scale and the neonatal and the newborn behavioural observation, so NBAS and EMBO, which are interventions that you can do. One's more in depth, so the NBAS is more in depth than the EMBO, to show parents how very young babies, so the NBAS you can do from up to 8 weeks postnatally after the baby's born, so up to the baby being 8 weeks, and the EMBO you can do up to the baby being 12 weeks, and it really shows how robust babies are and how babies actually communicate with their families. So it allows parents to see them as little human beings with thoughts, feelings, and who are ready to make that relationship with them. And what they say, what we know is that their ability to be able to regulate these states improves with maturity, and it improves with having that relationship with their parents where their needs are met. So like we said, for a lot of babies, the sleep, wake and crying states are robust and clear. They move from sleep to awake states easily. They protect the sleep through something known as habituation. They usually can be consoled easily, even by professionals. So, and they show, and you would expect to see those hand-to-mouth attempts and successes for self-soothing. And like I said before, they use the environment for calming, which is known as that. It's known as visual locking. They will visually lock on something. However, immature babies, so babies that might have been born early, so they might be preterm babies or babies recovering from illness, or even those babies that have had a difficult delivery, may need more support. They may not be able to go through these baby states, state regulation. They may struggle with that and will need more support. And I think it's important that parents know that, because again, generally what happens is they then jump on there must be something medically wrong. They're not feeding as well, etc. They don't sleep as well. They must have reflux. There must be something medically wrong. And we've already ruled that out. Actually, it's just because they need more support. And particularly within the sleep states, they may be the children that actually you might need to be quiet around, that might need that cuddling a bit more to get them to sleep, to maintain that state regulation. And so we talked about temperament. And so there are three. So temperament is innate. It's there at birth, and it's determined by genetics and biological factors. So it's determined, not that we often say this to parents, but it's determined by whatever happened when that baby was in the womb. So what we know is there's always been this myth that babies, unborn babies particularly, but newborn babies can't be emotionally neglected or emotionally abused. We know for something called epigenetics, which is a fairly new science, that actually they can. If mum's under stress during pregnancy, she will produce a lot of cortisol that will transfer to the baby, may transfer to the baby. So babies can, and it can affect the brain development in pregnancy. It can affect their DNA and what that DNA looks like. And that will result in, it usually affects their temperament and what sort of temperament they're going to have. So the first temperament is easygoing babies. So they are easygoing and develop regular eating and sleep patterns with ease. These are the babies that will cry for about 2 hours a day in order to make their needs known, because they all have needs. But generally, quite settled babies. And then you've got your feisty babies. I don't use the term difficult. I prefer the term feisty. These babies are the ones that may have been exposed to a lot of stress. Now, it's not a given that if mum's stressed in pregnancy that a baby will end up with a feisty temperament, but it is a risk. And that's why we want to reduce the stress. So if they've got a feisty baby, they tend to be very emotional, irritable and fussy and cry a lot. They also tend to have irregular eating and sleeping patterns, and they're difficult to soothe. So you can see why these babies get labelled as there must be something medically wrong with them, and it is usually the eye criers. And these babies will cry for about 5 hours a day and it still be classed as normal, but that's really difficult for parents. So parents need a lot of support. So it's no wonder they seek for they seek a medical cause. And for some babies it will be a medical cause, like we said before, so we would rule that out. But for a lot of babies, it's just that they've got a feisty temperament. And I usually make a bit of a joke, if you like, with parents, because when I talk about it, I'll say to them, who's the feisty one then? Who do they take after? And there's some good things about being feisty, isn't there, as you get, because it stays, we keep our temperament, it stays stable over time. So being feisty in your life can actually have its benefits, can't it?
It's and also, then you've got sorry, I was just going to say, Jane, that a feisty baby, sometimes they can be the reflection on what's happening for the parent as well. So it could be a parent that's really struggling with anxiety or really finding it difficult to make that connection. Absolutely. So I suppose we will always see the reflection of our emotions on our babies, because we are their safety, their security. So it's always something, just maybe an emotional check-in with the mum or the dad or non-birthing parent, just to see how they're doing. Because even if they're pretty much doing okay, if you've got a baby that's a high crier over 5 hours a day, they're probably going to feel really exhausted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it can be, you're right, when they're born, if they're it might not be, it can be that something's going on, and particularly if that baby can be soothed by yourself, but not by a parent, then you might be thinking, is there something else? Is mum under stress? Is there anxiety? Is there, domestic violence or something going on that's making this mum so anxious? Because we know that babies are very much in tune, particularly with their mums. And then you've got your slow to warm up babies. These babies are often seen as the good babies, because they have low activity level. These are the ones that will be your shy children. These are the ones that parents will describe. We take them to a play group and it takes them a long time to move away from us. They seem to prefer adults, and they've just got this slow to warm up babies. But they can be left, because they can be perceived as the good babies, they may not get the interaction that they need. So they may need more interaction, and they may not gain weight, because they may not be, these may be the babies that have to be woken up to feed, because they're not that, they don't express the needs as well as the other two types of temperament. And then they develop the personality as a result of the relationships they have with those around them. So, like I said before, if you've got, say, if you've got a slow to warm up baby and you've got a depressed mum, you can imagine that what could happen there, that baby doesn't get the interaction that they need, because mum's really struggling to see to herself, never mind, and probably feels it's a blessing that she's got a baby that actually isn't, has got low activity level, and she feels like she doesn't have to stimulate. But then that can impact on that baby's, like I say, their brain development and their ability to develop develop how we would want a child to. And the same for if you've got a feisty baby, and you've got a mum that's anxious, then they're sort of battling each other, and so it can be a difficult fit. Or if you've got a feisty baby and a depressed mum or dad, that fit is not going to be good. So they need that support. Parents will need that support, so that the baby gets what it needs, but also any risks of having a baby, that mismatch that risk can cause. We always talk about icon. Obviously we talk about, don't we, that shaken baby. Again, if you've got a mismatch, that increase the risk. So it's important we give, all practitioners do training, icon training within Wakefield, and that we all give the same messages. So icon is just an acronym. I stands for infant crying is normal. C is and that's when they talk about that peak of crying from 2 years reaching, after 2 weeks reaching a peak about 6 to 8 weeks and gradually getting better. But again, remember what I said before, there'll always be periods where they'll have inconsolable crying, so the risk doesn't stop there. Comfort methods can help, so things like getting in the bath with baby, skin to skin. Touch is an antidote to the cortisol, and babies obviously that are crying are producing cortisol because they're stressed. So, you know, using touch, so that's why baby massage, you know, it is really important. Teaching them baby massage is really important because we know that touch helps the baby to release oxytocin and blocks that cortisol, and the same, you know, that touch for the parent does the same. Going out for a walk, getting fresh air, etc. And then, the middle bit, it's okay to walk away, you know, if you're getting stressed. And actually, it's the best thing to do, because if you're stressed and you're producing cortisol, your baby then produces more cortisol. So then you produce more cortisol, and you can see where that's headed. It just goes up and up and up. Whereas if you put your baby down safe, in a safe space, walk away, have a breather. It's not going to harm the baby that way. Have a breather, do whatever you do to get yourself centered, reduce that cortisol in yourself, allow that oxytocin to go through. You're more likely then to be able to support that baby once they've stopped crying. And then obviously never ever shake a baby. And you know, so it's important that we all give that message, and that's the same if you've got somebody saying to you in your groups, or you know, surgeries, whatever, coming to you and they're saying they're really struggling with the crying. We should always be giving that message. We should always be signing and posting them to the icon website. We should always be reiterating, you know, it's okay to walk away. We should be giving that message for any, whether it's a feeding issue and there's lots of crying, etc. Whatever it is, we should always be giving that message to protect that baby. It's a good opportunity. So this is the crying curve, which fits with the temperament. It is scientifically based. So as you can see, you've got your eye criers, which is your feisty babies, will cry for 5 to 6 hours at a time. And then you've got your average criers, which are your easygoing babies. And then you've got your low criers, which is the ones that are slow to burn. And it's a really good visual for parents to see. So how can we as professionals help parents? Rule out a medical cause always. You know, don't just dismiss that it could be, you know, a parent-infant relationship issue. We need to make sure that there's nothing medical going on. So we'd get them to see the GP and hopefully paediatrics. But always discuss normal baby behaviour. Contact, you know, use our website. On the website, Wakefield Growing Healthy website, the bonding section has lots of things around, obviously, bonding and what's normal and what isn't normal, all the things that we've talked about, some of the things that we've talked about today. Cues, discuss cues with parents so that they can start to recognise, you know, when baby states, when baby wants to communicate, when baby wants to interact, and when baby needs that rest. Obviously reiterate the icon message. Discuss with your health visitor so that they can give some extra support. Or refer to us if you know if it's ongoing, or you think there's a parent-infant relationship with you know, with support with consent from the parents, and if they're really struggling, refer to us. That's what we're here for, to give them that support around that parent-infant relationship. And you know, even if they're coming to you and saying, "Oh, I've been to GP and she's had all this and she's still crying, or she still doesn't seem settled," that is a reason to refer to us, or if you've got an eye crier, whatever, because generally what we're finding is there's usually something else. But even if there isn't something else and it is just that they've got an eye crier, we can support them with that. So that's, you can end the
Any questions?
Any questions?
No, I
I
don't
think
think
so.
so.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that was really informative.
It
Thank
was,
you.
yeah, thanks.
Can I ask that people put their email in the chat just so I can send evaluations out? Would that be all right?
Yeah, thank
Um,
you very much. I've had my camera off because I've been eating my lunch, so I have
No,
been
don't worry,
present.
Jodie, it's fine. It's
But I
fine.
didn't want you to watch
And
me
then-
lunching, so.
And then just a shameless plug, as you were saying before, Jodie, because I think you joined halfway through. If you've not done infant mental health ready to relate training, it is open to all anybody that works with children, particularly babies and young children. It's on, to access it, you go on to the Wakefield Safeguarding Children's Partnership.
Yeah.
Put ready into its training search bar and you'll find it. And just tell anybody that works with children, anybody can access it. It's free to access. You know, you get lots of resources to use with families. It's probably been updated since you did it, Adele.
I might have to book on again.
Yeah, so you get, like I say, lots of resources.
Oh,
And
thank
our
you so
next-
much.
And our next month's lunchtime learning is actually focused a little bit more on crying and excessive crying baby. So we go into it in a little bit more detail.
Brilliant. Love I'll join that
Thank
one.
you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
for joining.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.